Hello everyone, today I will continue telling you the story of the single mother Johan. I hope you enjoy the video. After spending some time abroad with her mother, Tusan gradually learned how to blend into the rhythm of life here. The new city no longer felt as unfamiliar as it did in the early days. The roads had become familiar, her schedule had settled, and morning walks in the small park near home with Ivy had turned into a routine. Life here wasn't noisy or rushed, it was quiet enough for one to slow down and listen to oneself. Tusan began to adapt. She learned how to manage things on her own, how to smile at the neighbors, how to cook meals that suited her mother's taste, and how to hide the emptiness that crept in whenever night fell. Yet no matter how stable life became, there were still very small, trivial things that quietly pulled her back to old memories. A familiar flavor in a meal. A song that happened to come on the radio. A checkered shirt hanging in a clothing store. Or simply the yellow streetlight spilling onto the road at dusk. Each time, Hai's image appeared vividly, without being called, without any effort to remember. He surfaced in the most seemingly insignificant moments, with his quiet smile, with the way he used to stand waiting on the porch, with the small, thoughtful gestures that Tusan once took for granted. She missed Hai not in a loud way. Not through sharp, overwhelming pain. But through a gentle, persistent longing that seeped into the ordinary moments of daily life. Some evenings, after Ivy had fallen sound asleep, Tusan would sit alone by the window, holding her phone for a long time. She opened and closed her chat with Hai, rereading old messages, simple check-ins, familiar reminders. That man had never declared his love in grand words, yet he was always there, quietly, patiently, never leaving. Tusan began to question herself more often. She wanted to return. She wanted to relive the simple, real days with Hai, where there was a small kitchen, modest meals, and a man who silently cared for her and Ivy with all his sincerity. By Hai's side, Tusan never had to force herself to be strong. She could be herself, be vulnerable, lean on a shoulder steady enough to hold her. But whenever that thought formed, she would look at her mother. The woman who had waited for so many years. The woman who had sacrificed so much to reach this day. The woman who longed every day to be close to her daughter, to make up for the years of separation. Tusan couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear to leave just as her mother had finally regained the feeling of a complete home. She couldn't bear to place her mother once again in the position of saying goodbye. She couldn't bear to hurt the woman who had devoted her entire life to her. Between two poles of longing, Hai on one side, her mother on the other, Tusan realized she was facing the hardest choice of her life. A choice with no right or wrong, only love and loss. Some nights, she rested her head on her mother's shoulder, quietly listening to that familiar, steady breathing. In that moment, Tusan understood that her heart wasn't divided. It was simply loving too much, in different ways. And perhaps the road ahead wouldn't be about leaving anyone behind, but about finding a way to keep everyone, though she knew it wouldn't be easy. That night, Tusan couldn't sleep. The house was so quiet she could hear the clock ticking softly, one beat at a time. Her mother lay beside her, breathing evenly, but Tusan knew she wasn't truly asleep. Some things, even unspoken, were enough to keep both of them awake. After a long while, Tusan spoke softly. "Mom, what if one day I want to go back to Vietnam?" The question wasn't loud, but in the stillness it rang clearly. Her mother didn't answer right away. She turned to look at her daughter with an expression both gentle and worried, the gaze of a mother who had waited far too long. "I know you'll miss it," she said slowly. "Miss the old place, miss the people there. I don't blame you." Tusan turned her face away. Her throat tightened. She didn't say Hai's name, but they both understood. "But with you here," her mother continued, her voice lowering. I finally feel at ease. For so many years, all I wished for was to see you every morning, to hear you call me mom right in front of me, not through a phone. Tusan squeezed her mother's hand. I'm afraid, if I leave, you'll be alone again. Her mother smiled, but the smile was fragile. I'm used to being alone, she said. But being used to it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. She paused, then added softly. I won't force you. But if possible, I still want you to stay. Just a little while longer. Tusan didn't reply. She leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, feeling the familiar warmth she had missed for so many years. In that moment, she understood that some kinds of love don't need to cling, but their mere existence is enough to make leaving impossible. Back in their hometown, Hai was also living through a very long night. He sat on the porch, the yellow light spilling onto the empty yard. The road in front of the house was the same as ever, quiet, familiar, yet missing a presence that once made everything feel alive. At dinner, Hai ate slowly. The bowl in front of him was still full. Sometimes he looked up, as if expecting someone to speak, then lowered his gaze in silence. The house wasn't noisy, but it was precisely that silence that made the emptiness ache. His phone lay beside him, the screen dark. Hai didn't send another message. He was afraid that asking would make things harder for Tusan. He understood she was with her mother, the woman who had lost her daughter for too long to let go easily again. But understanding didn't mean it didn't hurt. As night deepened, Hai lay facing the window. He missed the smallest things, the sound of Tusan's footsteps in the kitchen, the light switching on every early morning, even her ordinary scolding. Those things had now become luxuries. Hai had never thought of giving up. He was simply waiting. Waiting for a day when Tusan would feel peaceful enough to return. Or at least, waiting for an honest word. In two different places, Tusan and Hai both looked up at the night sky. One stood between love and filial duty. The other stood between hope and silence. And both understood, there are weights that need no promises, yet still hurt to the very core. English translation ***. That day, Tusan went to class as usual. The morning began in the most ordinary way, so ordinary that she had no bad premonition at all. Outside, the sky was lightly gray, neither raining nor harshly sunny. She walked into the lecture hall, chose her familiar seat by the window, set her bag down, and opened her book to the page she had left off the previous session. She tried to concentrate. She really did. But for some reason, throughout that class, Tusan felt unsettled. It wasn't homesickness, and it wasn't exactly missing Hai either, it was a vague emptiness, as if something were waiting to happen, just not yet taking shape. The lecturer spoke, words flowed steadily across the board. Yet Tusan had to read the same passage 2 or 3 times to understand it. Her hand tightened unconsciously around her pen, her heart beating faster than usual. She tried to reassure herself, it was probably just fatigue. Until her phone vibrated. The sound was very soft, but in the quiet classroom it made her start. She glanced down at the screen. An unfamiliar number. Not saved. Not recognized. Her heart suddenly clenched. 1 second. 2 seconds. She hesitated. The thought crossed her mind to ignore it and call back after class. But the unease she'd felt earlier suddenly sharpened, like a cold hand gripping her chest. Tusan asked permission to step outside. The hallway was empty. White light spilled onto the cold tile floor, stretching lonely shadows. She leaned against the wall, took a deep breath, and then pressed answer. Hello? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then a familiar voice, one she never expected to hear in this situation, rose, trembling and heavy. "San, it's me." Just those 4 words, and Tusan felt her heart drop into a bottomless void. "Yes, is there something you needed to tell me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her throat had gone dry. There was strained breathing on the line. Very faint. As if the speaker were holding back tears, or had already cried too much. "Hi. Hi." Hi's mother's voice caught. Just hearing that much, Tusan's legs went weak. "He's been in an accident, my dear." The world around Tusan tilted. She didn't scream. She didn't cry right away. She stood frozen, one hand gripping the wall, the other clutching the phone, shaking. Her ears rang, her heart pounded wildly, each beat heavy, as if striking straight against her chest. "The accident, is it very serious?" she asked, her voice small and broken, as if raising it even a little would cause everything to collapse. On the other end was a long silence. So long that panic began to rise in Tusan. Then Hi's mother spoke, each word falling slowly and heavily, like a sentence of death. "It's very serious, the doctors say, he may not make it. He's in a deep coma." Tusan's ears rang completely. The words that followed no longer connected. They shattered, disjointed, crashing into her mind without forming meaning. "I'm so scared. I don't know how much longer. I only hope that you'll come back to see him." The phone slipped from Tusan's hand. She grabbed it again in a panic, but her whole body was shaking so violently she could barely feel anything. The hallway blurred before her eyes, the white light smeared into long, formless streaks. She didn't know where she was standing. She didn't know whether she was breathing or choking. There was only one name echoing endlessly in her mind, over and over, pounding painfully. Hi. The man who had always stood behind her, never leaving. The man who had never blamed her, even when she hesitated, made promises, and said, "Just wait a little longer." Tusan felt a pain in her chest so intense it seemed her heart could no longer expand. As if taking just one more breath would make it shatter. She missed Hi. She missed the smallest things, his gaze each morning, his low, unhurried voice, the way he stood waiting at the doorway, the simple meals that were always somehow complete. She even missed his silence, the kind of silence that had never made her feel abandoned. And now, that man was lying motionless, suspended on the fragile line between life and death. San. Hi's mother's voice came again, weak, almost pleading. "If it's still possible. I beg you, come back to see him once." This time, Tusan couldn't hold on anymore. Tears burst forth, burning hot. She raised a hand to cover her mouth, biting her lip to keep from crying out loud. Her whole body trembled, her knees gave way, and she slid down to sit against the cold wall. She wanted to answer. She wanted to say, "I'll come back right away." She wanted to say, "Please wait for me." But she couldn't breathe. In that moment, all her previous hesitation vanished. There was no longer a choice between her mother and Hi. No staying or returning. No fear of hurting anyone. There was only one fear left, so immense it swallowed everything. The fear that by the time she made it back, the person she loved most would no longer be able to wait. And Tusan realized something far too late. There are decisions in life that give no time to prepare. They only allow pain, and force a choice at the very moment when the heart is nearly shattered. Tusan sat on the hallway floor for a long time before she could stand. Her legs shook so badly she had to hold on to the railing to walk. She didn't return to class. She had no mind left for anything except the call she had just received. She dialed her mother's number. The phone rang for a long time. Each tone made her heart pound harder, as if she feared that any further delay would make everything too late. "Yes, Mom." Her mother's voice was familiar, calm as always. Just hearing it, the last layer of Tusan's defenses collapsed. "Mom." She couldn't continue. Just those two words, and her voice completely broke. Tears poured out uncontrollably, her throat tightened so much she had to bend forward just to breathe. On the other end, her mother was startled. "San? What's wrong? What happened?" Tusan shook her head reflexively, even though she knew her mother couldn't see. She took a deep breath, but the harder she tried to hold it in, the more clearly her sobs escaped. Hi was in an accident, Mom," she said through tears. "It's very serious, the doctors say, he might not make it." Silence. Just 1 second, but to Tusan, it felt as long as a lifetime. "I want to go back," she cried, almost begging. "Mom, please let me go back. I'm so scared. I'm afraid I won't make it in time." On the other end, her mother didn't answer right away. Tusan heard a very soft, very heavy sigh. She knew her mother was hurting no less than she was. "Calm down," her mother said, her voice lowering. "You can go back. I won't stop you." Just those 4 words, and Tusan broke down like a child. "I'll go with you," her mother continued, slowly but firmly. "I won't let you be alone." At that point, Tusan no longer had the strength to reply. She just nodded over and over, tears falling onto her hands, onto the cold floor, unstoppable. When she got home, Tusan barely remembered how she made it there. She opened her room door, stood still for a few seconds, then began packing in a near panic. Her hands trembled, her mind blank. She dragged her suitcase into the middle of the room, stuffing clothes inside in a rush, no folding, no choosing. Every time her hand touched something familiar, her heart tightened. The jacket Hai used to wear. The scarf he bought for Ivy. A small item he had sent her, telling her to keep it safe. Tusan collapsed onto the floor, clutching the jacket to her chest, crying soundlessly. She didn't dare think further. Just one stray thought was enough to overwhelm her. Would I make it back in time? Is he still breathing? Will he wake up? The questions drilled into her mind, none with an answer. Her mother stood at the doorway, not urging her on. She simply watched her daughter trembling amid the messy room, her eyes filled with both pain and helplessness. There are pains a mother cannot bear in place of her child. On the plane, Tusan sat by the window. The engines roared as the plane began to accelerate. She gripped the armrest tightly, her nails digging into her skin without her noticing. Every slight vibration made her heart leap. Ivy slept soundly in her mother's arms. Tusan's mother sat beside her, one hand holding hers tightly, saying nothing. Tusan looked out the window. The city gradually shrank, rows of buildings turning into distant blurs. But none of that registered in her mind. There was only Hai, motionless, cold, lying somewhere amid the smell of antiseptic and the white lights of a hospital. Time on the plane crawled with cruelty. Each passing minute felt like a trial. She didn't dare sleep. She didn't dare close her eyes for too long. She was afraid that even a moment's distraction would make her miss the most important moment of her life. Tusan placed a hand over her chest, trying to breathe evenly. But her heart raced wildly, her breathing impossible to control. "Hold on. Just a little longer." She repeated the words to herself, again and again, like a desperate prayer. Somewhere far ahead, someone lay on the boundary between life and death. And Tusan had only one fear now. That when the plane touched down, she would no longer be in time to grasp that hand. English translation **. As soon as the plane landed, Tusan could barely feel the ground beneath her feet. She only knew how to run. Running with the crowd, running through the echoing airport announcements, running with a heartbeat pounding so wildly it felt as if it might burst out of her chest. No time to look around. No time to take a deep breath. No time to think about where she was. Inside her, there was only one thought left: Hai was waiting. The taxi sped through the night, streetlights streaking across the windows in blurred lines. Tusan sat in the back seat, her hands clenched together until her knuckles turned white. She wasn't crying anymore. Her tears seemed to have dried up on the plane. What remained was a dry, suffocating fear clinging to her, refusing to let her collapse. When the car stopped in front of the hospital gate, Tusan flung the door open and rushed out. The hospital blazed with bright lights. The sharp smell of antiseptic hit her nose, cold and unfamiliar. The sound of hurried footsteps, rolling carts, and urgent voices filled the air. Everything before her spun. "Hai, where is Hai?" she asked, almost shouting at the receptionist, her voice trembling so badly it barely formed words. Before she could hear the answer, Tusan saw a familiar figure at the far end of the hallway. Hai's mother. She was curled up on a plastic chair against the wall, her back hunched, her hands tightly clasped together. Her face was so gaunt that Tusan almost didn't recognize her. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying too much. "Auntie." Tusan managed only that one word before her legs gave way. Hai's mother looked up. When she saw Tusan, her eyes trembled, then broke. She stood abruptly, staggered forward a few steps, and grabbed Tusan's hands tightly, as if afraid she might disappear. "You're back, you really came back, San?" Her voice cracked. Tusan nodded repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. "Where is Hai? How is he?" she asked urgently, her breath breaking. Is he still alive?" Hai's mother didn't answer right away. She squeezed Tusan's hands even tighter, her lips trembling as tears spilled again. "He's still breathing," she said softly. "But the doctors say it's very critical. He hasn't woken up even once." Tusan felt as if her heart were being crushed. "I beg you, please let me see him," she pleaded. "Please." Hai's mother nodded and turned to lead her. Every step down the long, cold hallway felt unbearably heavy. Tusan followed behind her, her mind empty, her ears ringing. She couldn't hear the machines, couldn't see the people passing by, only the intensive care room door slowly coming into view. The door was slightly ajar. Hai's mother stopped, her trembling hand resting on the doorknob. "Prepare yourself," she said, her voice barely human. The door opened. Tusan stepped inside. The room was freezing. White light shone down on the hospital bed in the center. And there, Hai lay motionless. She froze. Hai had grown so thin. His face was pale, drained of all color. A breathing tube was fixed in his nose, for lines tangled around his arm. His chest rose ever so faintly with the rhythm of the machine, so weak that Tusan was terrified that if she blinked, the movement would disappear. She stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid of shattering the fragile space. "Hai," she whispered. No response. Tusan collapsed to her knees beside the bed. She took his icy hand in both of hers, gripping it tightly as if trying to pass over the last bit of warmth she had. "I'm back." Her voice shook. "Can you hear me?" "I'm back." Tears fell onto the back of his hand, burning hot. But Hai remained still, his eyes tightly closed, his face cruelly calm. Tusan bent her head down by the bedside and sobbed. She remembered every small moment, every time he waited silently, every time he said, "It's okay," every time he chose silence instead of blame. And now that man lay here, unable to open his eyes to see her, unable to say a word of reproach or forgiveness. "Please don't leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm begging you. I've come back already." Out in the hallway, Hai's mother leaned against the wall, tears quietly falling. She didn't go in. She knew that in this moment, Tusan needed to be with her son more than anyone else. In the cold white room, there was only the steady hum of machines and the sound of stifled, heartbreaking sobs. And Tusan understood, she had never been more afraid of losing Hai than now, when he was right in front of her, yet farther away than ever. A soft knock sounded on the door. Even in the air thick with antiseptic, the sound was enough to make Tusan start. She lifted her head, eyes red and swollen, still gripping Hai's hand as if letting go would cause him to drift away forever. A doctor stood at the door, his face solemn, his gaze heavy. He looked at Tusan, then at Hai's mother behind her, and gave a small nod. "The family, please step outside and speak with me for a moment." Just that short sentence sent Tusan's heart plunging straight into an abyss. She rose slowly, her legs heavy, no longer feeling like her own. Before leaving, she leaned down, close to Hai's ear, whispering so softly, as if afraid to wake him, or afraid to hear the words herself. "I'll be right back, please wait for me." Out in the hallway, the white lights were cruelly cold. The doctor stood facing the two women, holding the medical file, yet even he seemed to need a moment before speaking. "The patient's condition is very severe," he said slowly, each word clear and unavoided. "There is serious brain trauma with extensive bleeding. He is currently in a deep coma and completely dependent on mechanical life support." Hai's mother trembled, gripping the edge of the wall. Is there any hope, doctor?" Her voice nearly shattered. The doctor was silent for a few seconds. The pause was so long that Tusan felt her ears ring. "We have done everything we can," he continued. "But the chance of survival is very low. The family should prepare themselves for the worst-case scenario." Tusan could no longer hear what followed. Only a few words drilled relentlessly into her mind. Very low. Worst-case scenario. Prepare yourselves. Hai's mother collapsed onto a chair. A sob burst out, choked and soundless. Tusan stood frozen, no tears, no words, no reaction. She felt as if everything inside her had been drained, leaving only a hollow, aching emptiness. The doctor looked at Tusan, his voice softening. "If there's anything you wish to say to the patient, it would be best to say it soon." The sentence felt like a final knife. Tusan returned to the room alone. The door closed behind her, shutting out the world. In the cold white space, there was only the steady sound of machines and Hai's unmoving form on the bed. She sat down beside him and slowly took his hand. It was still cold, still terrifyingly still. "Hai." Her voice was hoarse. The doctor said, "Can you hear me?" She gave a small, crooked smile, full of despair. "I told you, just a little more time. I asked you to wait for me. I said when things were better, I would come back." Tears fell, heavy and unceasing. She remembered that unfinished promise from years ago, spoken so softly on an ordinary afternoon that no one could have imagined it would become the greatest regret of a lifetime. "Wait for me, Hai. I just need a little more time. When I come back, we'll live peacefully." Hai had nodded. He didn't ask how long. He didn't ask why. He only said, very gently, "I can wait." Tusan bent forward, her forehead resting against the back of his hand, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm back now. I don't need more time anymore. Open your eyes and look at me, just once is enough." She gripped his hand tightly, as if trying to hold him back with all the words left unsaid, all the things left undone. "If you wake up," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I won't go anywhere again. I promise." In the cold white room, Hai remained still. But Tusan kept speaking, kept crying, kept clinging to that promise, as if by saying it long enough, often enough, he might hear her. Because now, the only thing she could do was to say out loud all the love she had hesitated with for far too long.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình nhé. Mình đang làm video trên môi. Hôm bữa tập 8 vợ tải lên trên kia rồi, bây giờ này tập 9. Tập 8 bữa sau khám thì được công chiếu sau. Tập 9. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều vì đã theo dõi video của mình nhé. Đi sửa cái thôn lại. Xong rồi mà